Everyone is arguing about which AI tool is better. Is it OpenClaw or is it Claude Code? Go read the comments of a lot of these AI videos. It's truly a war zone out there. But here's the thing. They're asking the wrong question. It's like asking whether Slack is better than VS Code. They're not really competitors. They're completely different tools built for completely different jobs. Now, I do need to mention OpenClaw and Claude Code can be sometimes perceived as doing the same things, positioning them to be the exact same type of platform or infrastructure. But today I'm going to score them across 6 different categories that matter personally in our infrastructure and show you the real builds from each one, and then give you the setup that most serious builders are quietly running behind the scenes. Quick context so that you know I'm not just reading a spec sheet here. I've been running both of these tools hard. Same projects, same use cases side by side, and I wanted to see where each one actually shines and where it falls apart. Not based on marketing or Twitter trends, but based on what happens when you put real work through them. Hey, I'm Johnny Nell. I spent years building businesses the old hard way, managing teams, scaling operations, and doing everything manually. Today, everything I built, from automations and no-code infrastructures to fully AI SaaS products, has AI helping in one way or another. Firstly, let me quickly show you this. In South Africa, we call this a braai. I build with AI tools that, in my opinion, anyone can learn to use. My mission is simple: to help creators, entrepreneurs, and business owners get clarity with AI. Let's build smarter together and enjoy this video. Let's quickly look at an overview of our time together today. So we're looking at OpenClaw versus Claude Code and which one you should actually be using. So firstly, we're going to look at the category problem that a lot of builders and founders are facing and who they are built for, the breadth versus the depth, the memory and the context, as well as the security, the cost and potential return on investment, as well as the stack play. Let's look at point number 1, the category problem. Extremely important. This is where I see most people getting confused, so let's kill it right now. OpenClaw is a live operating system. It is a general purpose autonomous agent that connects to your messaging apps, your calendar, your smart home, your fitness devices, your email. There's countless of options within integrations around productivity, music, automation that you can plug OpenClaw into. It talks you through platforms like Signal, Telegram, Discord, WhatsApp, and many other messaging apps depending on their integration capabilities. I want you to look at this as your digital employee, but for life tasks. Don't get me wrong, you can do awesome stuff with it also professionally. But let's look at Claude Code for a second here. Claude Code started off being a coding agent that lives inside of your terminal. It reads the entire code base, it understands your dependency, it edits your files, it runs commands, and it ships features. It doesn't care about your grocery lists. It cares about your Git history and the way you're setting the infrastructures up locally, and also what that looks like, taking the entire context of the project into consideration. Now, I'm not saying that either one of them cannot do what the other one is doing. You most certainly can, but comparing these two is really like comparing a Swiss Army knife to a surgical scalpel, depending on how you set it up. One does 50 things, the other does one thing better than anything else on the planet. So that is how Claude Code started, really focusing on the coding aspect of it, starting out being a really good writer and a really good coding aspect. That's not a flaw in either tool. That's just the whole point of where Claude Code really shined. And the way that they've constructed Claude Code with the architecture, it's brilliant. So point number 2 is who they are actually built for. When you look at OpenClaw, it does require a level of technicality and understanding on how all of that actually works. Where you compare that to Claude Code, yes, Claude Code now on their app has an opportunity to go into and selecting Claude Code, so the usability of it is really sufficient. You still can run it in your terminal. So if you are a bit more experienced from the technical realm, you can do quite a lot with Claude Code inside of terminal. But going through OpenClaw, understanding the security architecture and ensuring that everything is set up correctly, that can be a challenge for some from time to time. Now, depending on your setup, depending on what you're using it for, those are extremely important factors to take into consideration and ensure that everything gets built the way that it needs to based on what you want to achieve with it. For example, if you want to utilize OpenClaw for certain things, what really works well, taking that into consideration, is building automations with the agentic infrastructure that it provides, especially now with it partnering with OpenAI and the capabilities of what OpenAI's team is bringing to the table. But for example, if you want to book a dinner reservation, that is something that OpenClaw can assist with. If you needed to summarize your emails, monitor your smart home, or browse the web and come back with answers, that is the key to go to. And if your output is decisions and delegation, OpenClaw is your tool. Let's say, for example, you provide website or perhaps apps for businesses. Well, that's what you want to do. And you know that you've got the capabilities to build something remarkable that is second to none based on that specific industry. You could run a niche-specific scraping component that goes out and that looks at all of the local businesses in your area, and then you can have OpenClaw not just scrape and look at those businesses, but look at their websites and then rebuild it even better. Send out that email to them suggesting here's a potential look and feel of the new website, perhaps upselling them to an app alongside with that, and get that to move. Claude Code, as mentioned earlier, was built mainly for developers, and that has changed over the past few months. Where Claude Code is really strong is if your output is code, or if it's refactoring, or it's debugging, if it's test generations, if it's fixing CI pipelines, this is where Claude thrives. It currently holds 80.9% on SWE Bench Verified, which is one of the highest scores of any AI coding tool that's currently out in the market. So that's not just marketing, that is a benchmark, and everything is essentially code. Everything that we build from, we're building towards, is going to require code, and that is why Claude has really been so well positioned within that realm, because all the big platforms do utilize Opus for writing code and building infrastructures. So here's a simple test. If you want AI to reschedule your meetings and order flowers for your partner's birthday, I would say go with OpenClaw. If you want AI to refactor your authentication system, write integration tests, that's more Claude Code's strengths. Different jobs, different tools, even though they can do both. So let's look at point number 3. Breadth versus depth. OpenClaw is a model agnostic. You can run it on Claude, GPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, Qwen, or any other local models through Llama. Now that's also something you can do with Claude Code, but OpenClaw's created to be able to leverage all of that. One configuration change and you've switched providers. On top of that, the community has built thousands upon thousands of skills on Claw Hub, pre-built capabilities that you can plug and run. That's raw flexibility. You're never locked into one provider or one way of doing things. Now, by the way, guys, I've got all the resources for you inside of the community, which I will link down in the description below. Looking at Claude Code. Claude Code takes the opposite approach to OpenClaw. It is locked to Claude models only, which is Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku. No model switching, but what it gives up in breadth, it makes up in depth. So it maps entire code bases in seconds. It understands how your files connect, what depends on what, and where the tests are, where the bugs probably live. And with the new agent teams feature, you can run multiple agents communicating through shared tasks, lists, and MCP integrations. That's not just autocomplete, that is an engineering team. Depending on what you're building, the trade-off can be real. OpenClaw gives you 100 tools at arm's length, while Claude Code gives you one tool that goes 10 levels deep. It really just depends on how you set that up. Now, I've been running both of these side by side for months, and if you want the actual workflows, the actual configurations, the decision frameworks with the routing tasks to the right tool, that is all inside of the Founders Vault. I've attached the link to the vault down in the comments below. See you in there. Now let's discuss point number 4, which is memory and context. This one really matters more than people think. OpenClaw has persistent memory baked in from day one. It stores context in plain text, recall weeks of conversations automatically, and adapts to your habits over time. You don't configure it, you don't set it up, it just remembers. Now, that's powerful for a personal assistant. The longer you use it, the better it gets at anticipating what you need, and that cycle just continues. When you're looking at Claude Code, it's quite session-based. Now, you can set it up where it's very similar, where you have a database where it stores past conversations and that you can recall it and also teach it to become more aware and access memory the right way. But when the conversation ends, the context is gone. But here's where it gets really interesting. With a Claude MD file and a structured memory system, you can give Claude Code project level persistence that actually rivals what OpenClaw does out of the box. With the latest updates that shipped, where you have teleportation between devices, background agents, and 3 times more memory capacity for long conversations, that is really what you want to take into consideration. But the catch is you have to build that memory architecture yourself. But you can also ask Claude Code to assist with that, which is the upside. So, on a stake, OpenClaw wins on memory out of the box. Now, you need to set that up correctly, because if you don't, you're going to run into massive API costs, and it's going to cost you significantly more than what you perhaps could have had a VA to do all of those tasks for you. So that nuance there is extremely important, and you can find a lot of those setups inside of the community. But if you're willing to invest the time and configure it, you can have a solid infrastructure as well when it comes down to Claude Code's memory system. It really becomes good. It really just depends on the architecture. And it's going to be very hard for any other platform to match that, because it's tied directly to your code base, your project history, and your specific workflows. Now let's look at point number 5, which is the most important here. It is security. Guys, I cannot stress this enough. You've probably seen a lot of the content I talked about security, but this is the section nobody else wants to properly investigate and spend time on. So let me be direct. In early 2026, researchers disclosed a critical vulnerability, an exploit in OpenClaw that allowed one-click remote code execution through a WebSocket hijack. If your OpenClaw goes and clicks a malicious link while OpenClaw is running and the attacker gets full control of your machine, that is not a situation to take lightly. That is very, very catastrophic. So if that is not set up, you're going to have problems. And if you want to have that set up correctly, the best way possible, go through to the community and I'll show you where to access the resources that will put you in a very good place to be able to not just understand it, but to help your OpenClaw set up everything as securely as possible. Guys, it gets worse as well, because Security Scorecard's Strike team found over 135,000 OpenClaw instances that was exposed directly to the internet, not behind a VPN, not behind authentication, just sitting there open. And the supply chain problem is even bigger. Researchers initially found 341 malicious skills on ClawHub, and I mean that is such a small percentage of what is actually out there. And these guys are stealing user data, so do take that into consideration. That number grew to 820, roughly 20% of the entire registry in a very short time frame. Another company called SNCC Toxic Skills did a study and found prompt injection vulnerabilities in 36% of all the skills identified. A single coordinated campaign called Claw Havoc was traced across 14 compromised accounts, responsible for 335 of those malicious skills alone. Microsoft published an entire security blog on how to run OpenClaw securely, covering the identity isolation and runtime risk. If you don't know how to set that up, it is, from a technical standpoint, not as simple as you would be able to just go into Claude Code and communicate, but it needs to be set up correctly. Now, here's the mechanism chain you need to understand. Open ecosystem leads to a massive skill library, which leads to no robust vetting process, which leads to malicious skills getting published, which leads to users installing them and trusting them within their platform, which leads to data exfiltration and malware delivery. The openness that makes OpenClaw powerful is the same openness that creates these attack surfaces. That is not a bug in philosophy. That's the trade-off. And looking at Claude Code, it takes the opposite approach. It runs locally on your machine as well. It's sandboxed, and every tool execution requires permission. The attack surface is dramatically smaller because there's no real WebSocket exposure, no community that can contribute to the code running with your credentials. And that said, it's not immune. Any tool with terminal access carries inherent risks, and you're still trusting a cloud model with your code base. So the difference is surface area, but it can also become catastrophic. But I want to be fair here. OpenClaw patched their CVE. The OpenAI team that came on board is actively working on hardening these security architectures. But the architectural changes, the exposed instances, the skill supply chain, and the permission model, those are structural. They don't get fixed with one patch. The potential biggest insider threat of 2026. You can disagree with that framing, but you can't ignore the data behind it. And that is extremely important. So this brings me to point number 6, the cost and potential return on investment. Guys, this is, again, very important to take into consideration. OpenClaw is free and it's open source under MIT. You clone it, you run it, you own it. But free doesn't mean zero cost. You're paying for API access to whatever model provider you choose, plus hosting and compute if you're running it on a server. The costs scale with usage and add up fast when your agent is running 24/7. Now, Claude Code, on the other hand, runs on a subscription model. Pro is $20 a month, Max starts from $100 a month with 5 times the usage. And if you're on the API directly, Opus runs about $5 per million input tokens and $25 per million output tokens. I mean, if you're a working builder using it daily, the average comes out to roughly $6 a day. That's predictable. But at scale across a team, it adds up very quickly. So here's the real question though. Neither tool is cheap at serious usage levels. The question isn't which one costs less. It's about which one saves you more time on the work that you actually do. And if you're a builder, developer, or founder, shipping features, $6 a day for an agent that holds 80.9% of coding benchmarks is a steal. But if you're a founder automating your life for operations, and you're running through API, the API costs for OpenClaw are worth it if you're saving 2 hours a day on admin work, as an example. And here's the thing that I see nobody is talking about, and it's the real reason I made this video. If you can afford it, I would say stop chasing them. Use both. OpenClaw handles your life's automation, your emails, your scheduling, monitoring, personal tasks, while Claude Code handles all of the stuff that you need to build. Whether you need to ship something, debug something, refactor certain writing components within it, that is where Claude Code is extremely strong and it shines. And that's going to cost you much less if you were to use the max plan instead of leveraging the API for it. And take into consideration, they don't compete for the same jobs. They don't even operate in the same environment. One lives in your messaging apps and the other lives in your terminal, even though you can set up both the same way. The smartest setup I've seen, and the one I run myself, routes tasks by height. For example, OpenClaw manages all the incoming alerts, the summaries, the scheduling, the monitoring, the flagging, everything that needs attention, where Claude Code manages the output, the code, the scripts, the automations, the deployments, ensuring that the agentic infrastructure with daily tasks could also be managed. And then I utilize a lot of a hybrid setup where, for example, with Claude Code, I do bring in local models that's on the desktop to help with certain components, like for example, RAG setup or going back in time and getting more information so that I don't have to pay Claude for those specific tokens. If you have a good local setup, you can set it up to do all of that for you. And the important thing here is that the two tools never step on each other because they are solving completely different problems. That's the setup most serious founders and builders are running, in my opinion. Not one, not the other, both. Rooted to the right job, and that's the framework. Not which tool is easier, but which tool gets which task. So guys, let me know down in the comments below and tell me what you're building right now, which tool you're using, and which tool you're still leaning towards. I read every single one of the comments, and if you feel called to it, subscribe if you want more practical breakdowns like this. No hype, just what actually is working in production, and you want the full decision frameworks, the exact configurations, and the permission audit checklist I built after digging through all of the security research. Join the AI Founders Vault. The link is down in the description below. And I'll see you in the next one, where I will show you what my setup looks like when building the hybrid setup, whether you're using Claude Code or whether you are using OpenClaw. See you then.